Welcome to the Six-Figure Author Experiment, where we help you break through your first or next $100,000 goal. Parental discretion is advised. Now, let's get on with the show.
Hello. Hi, Lee.
Hey, Russell. What's going on?
Not much. I'm very excited to be talking about one of my least favorite topics today, but with two awesome humans. And we are brought on by your ad person, Nick, and we're going to be talking about ads. So do you want to introduce Nick and have Nick talk about things?
Yes, absolutely. People are always asking me for ad resources, advice, whatever. And I'm always like, it's Nick Eriks or Nick Erickson. I need to make sure I get your website name correctly. You can tell me in a second, Nick. Nick ran my ads. He is very responsible, very conservative when it comes to testing and being smart, which I've had other people mess about with ads, and they tend to be kind of grifters. So well, that's enough said about that. We just, we love the principles that Nick teaches, and he has really great resources. A bunch of them are free. So Nick, can you tell us about your website and some of those resources? And then we can launch right into ads and Russell's launch.
Absolutely. Thanks, Russell and Lee, for having me on. And I'm Nicholas Erik, and I've run ads for probably a couple dozen authors at this point in a variety of genres. On my site, I have a lot of different materials on topics ranging to ads to general marketing. So if you're an indie author or just an author in general looking to build a part-time or full-time career, then that is what the resources there centered around.
I guess my main question revolves around why I hate ads, but why generally, in more general term, like why are authors so averse to doing ads? They don't seem to have a problem writing things or putting graphics together or talking about things. So like, what is it about the combination of like putting all of that into an ad that scares authors away so much?
I think part of it is that the ad platforms are complicated and there are a lot of different buttons that you can press. There are a lot of different settings. They can move quickly, particularly, say, this year, Facebook has made a lot of changes, and that can be overwhelming. I think part of it is mindset as well, where even full-time authors sometimes don't want to accept certain things they don't want to do are part of their job description. And when you have an actual job, presumably I've never actually had an actual job. I've always worked for myself, but there's someone there who says you have to do these things. Otherwise, you're not employed here anymore. And when you're self-employed, those same things need to happen. Otherwise, you don't have a job anymore, which in our case is writing books for readers. But that accountability and that push isn't there. And what happens is that people know that they have to run ads or do other forms of marketing. You could replace the ads with something else, but you have to do something to get your books in front of readers. And just mentally, I think it's so important when you accept that there's no way out of that. You have to do something. Maybe you don't want to do it, but if you want the author part of it, then you have to do it. The other option, of course, is going traditionally published, but the expectation there is that the publisher shoulders the bulk of the marketing load. And I think from speaking to various authors in my travels, that expectation probably isn't grounded in reality, where they may do some of the marketing, but unless you're already a massive author, then you're expected to do the bulk of the marketing. So regardless of whether you want to use ads or another traffic source, just knowing that you have to do it and that there's probably not someone better out there, meaning an agency, someone else that you can hire for social media, knowing those two things helps make that decision easier, where you say, okay, this is actually a skill that I'm going to invest time and resources into developing for myself.
Yes. I'm trying to find this thing that I saw yesterday. I watched Alex Hormozy video
Yeah.
about like everything that he learned about like being in business in like an hour and a half, and it was very good. And one of the things that he said was like there's basically 3 or 4 main channels of like how you're going to get traffic, and you need to like lock down one. And one of them is paid advertising, and then there was content, PR, and forget what the fourth one, but I'm going to say conferences because like that's what we talked about right before we got on the air. And I think that it's very similar, because you're basically paying money to appear in front of people, and then like trying to gather a bunch of people pass by your booth, and you're trying to like bring them into your funnel, tell them about your thing and make them buy. And like you pretty much doing like the same self-liquidating offers and like bundling and all of the same principles, but like you're doing them live. And that's how I started. And then and also I've done the content strategy, I've done the PR strategy, I'm doing the paid strategy now. But it's interesting how I think you're right. Like you have to pick one. Like you have to get good at least one of those things. Like whether it's PR, like doing a bunch of podcasts and like being present, whether it's social, whether it's content, whether it's like ads, like one of those things are going to be your main strategy. And frankly, ads is the one that you don't have to appear in person. It's like the only one that doesn't require your human capital and like your social capital and you existing in front of like to do. Like you could get in front of a 10,000 person podcast, but like you still have to do that hour. But like with ads, like you can like most of my friends who are very introverted like are very and still very successful are excellent at ads because like that is how they are able to scale. So like if you're like I don't want to be out in front of people like Russell, you're exhausting. Like I don't know how you do all these things. Like one of the main ways that I see very introverted people or people with chronic illnesses like myself, like they just are like, well, like I spend minimum 3 grand a month on ads just because like I can't be other places.
Yeah. And as
Like
someone who just did a reader signing, I was standing behind that booth going, why am I doing this? I could be writing, sending newsletters, doing ads. And I think I like the levers that Alex Ramonzi talks about pulling. The content would be, I think, our newsletters. And I recommend, if you're writing books, just add that newsletter in. And I know Nick teaches that. And then, I'm a big fan of make money from that series if you can. If you get something that already can sell to more than just your newsletter, it can be picked up a little bit more, reinvest that money into ads. But I think part of the struggle is this ad thing is sold to us as, oh, you just go in and push this one button and money pours out. And the reality is a lot more complicated. So Nick, can you in the next 30 minutes just simplify the ad concepts for us and help us, I guess, get a framework? You're all about fundamentals, which I really appreciate because you can apply that to so many different types of businesses. But what is it that we can think about when we go to ads that makes it simple and realistic too? Like not just push this button and make $1 million.
I think you have to break it down into components and really learn one platform at a time. That's a major mistake that I see people make where they think that they have to run Facebook and Amazon ads right from the start. Often I hear, I'm selling the book on Amazon, I need to advertise it on Amazon. And that's not true to activate the algorithms or anything like that. If your book is a good fit for Amazon ads and works well with Amazon ads, by all means, advertise it via that platform, but it's not a necessity. So you want to choose one of those and you can experiment with both of them if you're new and haven't tried either of them. If you've tried them both and have been in the game for a couple of years, then you probably know which one you're not only better at, but which one you prefer. Facebook is going to be more creative heavy, where the creative does the majority of the lifting. So that means your ad copy, your ad image, those are going to be the two primary levers there. The headline has an impact, but it's a little bit less. But those components are things that authors are usually already familiar with. The writing, copywriting isn't the same thing as writing fiction, but you can pull excerpts from your book. You can learn the skill of copywriting since you've already learned the skill of fiction writing and other forms of writing. And there's more direct transfer of existing skills. If you're good at branding, for example, then finding ad images and creating ad images or commissioning ad images, that's going to be an extension of that existing skill. Amazon ads are really a spreadsheet game where you want to be good at Google Sheets or Excel because you get so much data from the Amazon ads and you're targeting so many individual keywords or ASINs, or you just have so much data that comes from them that really, if you're not skilled at spreadsheets, then it's very difficult to sort through all that. And the deceptive thing about the Amazon ads is that they're easier to set up in the beginning than the Facebook ads. So they appear to be a much easier platform to master, but it's probably more difficult in the long term to really get good at the Amazon ads because not only do you need that additional spreadsheet skill, they're just a bit trickier to manage. Facebook is primarily selling ad inventory as their source of revenue. So that means that the ad interface and everything else is designed to facilitate that. Amazon isn't first and foremost an ad company. They make a giant portion of revenue from the ads, but they're not necessarily trying to get your ad dollar today. They have other considerations. They're selling products to customers. What that means is that the Amazon ads can be hesitant to spend your budget early on when you start up an ad. There are ways around that, but Facebook, if you give it $50, it'll spend $50 pretty much consistently. Amazon, if you say, hey, I want to spend $50, it may spend that $50 eventually. Rarely will it spend it out of the gate, but it also may spend 26 cents or $1.22. So that type of experience where just getting the ads to even serve can be challenging when you're new with the Amazon ads, can throw people off a bit. And by the way, one of the best ways to just get the Amazon ads to serve is to either bid higher and or use fixed bids. But usually that's a problem with just the bid not being high enough there. So I would choose one of those and decide what your current skill set is and then really focus on it. Don't get distracted by TikTok, by all these other forms of traffic that people are saying are blowing up for them or just central to their business. That may be true about their business, but it may not be true about yours. And by getting good at just one of them, you can build a 6-figure, 7-figure business. So uh, Alex Hormozy was mentioned, and one of his things is that to build to 7 figures, you have one avatar, one channel. And so in the book business with the indie publishing, you may need 2 to hit 7 figures, but you probably don't. And the other part of it is one product. So you would be selling, in our case, books. We have multiple products just by the way that our business is designed, but you're not necessarily branching out into merch or anything else. You're focusing on the books. And then your channel could be Amazon or Facebook. And then your avatar is whoever you're selling those books to, your target reader.
I see you're not mentioning BookBub ads, and I know that like that's like the third one. Like, is the idea get good at either Facebook, Amazon, and then get good at the other one, and then bring BookBub ads in there, or is there a place for BookBub ads at the beginning? Is there a place to just do BookBub ads, or like is that like how does that fit into your strategy?
I really like BookBub ads just as a platform, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend that most people use them because they're not very scalable and they burn out pretty quickly. Also, with BookBub ads, what you find at the start is that if you don't have an audience that works, then you're going to get CPCs that can range from $1 to $2 to $5, $6 a click. And when people are initially testing, that's going to throw them off and discourage them pretty quickly. So the story that I hear often when people talk about BookBub ads, I tested them, they performed horribly, and then I never went back. The thing with the BookBub ads is that if you get through that initial testing where you test the audiences and spend that $200, $300, $400 that is going to just be inefficient because you have to go through all the audiences that you can to find the gold there, then they can be usable in certain circumstances where you have a deeply discounted book. You could use them to sell a full price book, but generally, since the newsletter is built around deals, that's what people are going to be looking for in the advertising as well. So with the BookBub audience, is what you're looking for is an audience that's under 25,000 readers, and this is for targeting Amazon. So if the audience is over 25,000 readers, it's almost universally going to be a terrible performer. And I'd say probably the sweet spot there is somewhere between 3,000 to 10,000. Any fewer than 3,000 readers, that can work, but it's going to burn out on you really quickly, meaning you might only be able to spend $15 to it or $30 to it. And then again, anything above 25,000, it's extremely rare that it works. And that can cut down on the pain of testing. You're still going to be going through quite a few audiences that are just very expensive. But I'd say that the scalability is the main thing that is the bottleneck with BookBub, where if you invest your time in Amazon or Facebook, learning those, then the potential payoff is much higher. BookBub is also useful for testing blurbs and covers and other elements of your packaging, but you can do that with Facebook, and it's probably easier to do it with Facebook. The nice thing about BookBub when testing those is you're assured of getting that test in front of actual book buyers. Whereas with Facebook, if you don't have the settings right, if you don't have the targeting correct, then you could potentially be serving those type of tests to people who aren't interested in books at all, and then you wouldn't be getting good data. So I like BookBub for that type of testing. Discounts can be useful as well. And ultimately, you're probably not going to want to get good at all three of them because most people don't have the time and energy to do that. So I would just focus on what is most scalable. That's going to be Facebook or Amazon. It's going to be Facebook if you're a romance author. Then if you write other genres, then it could be Facebook or Amazon. So
It's almost certainly going to be Facebook for me because I'm wide. So like
and if you're direct, yeah, that's a good point. Then Facebook is where you should spend your time. Absolutely, because the sales pixel is incredible at finding whatever you tell it to find. So if you're telling it to go find buyers, then it can do that and track that for you directly in Facebook. And thus it makes more sense to focus the bulk of your advertising efforts on Facebook.
it sounds to me that like if you're an optimizing human or like an arbitrage human or like a big data human, we call those desert humans, like Amazon might be right for you because you're going to be spending a lot of time looking at spreadsheets and like optimizing. And I mean, I cringe just even thinking about that. But like if you're maybe not that, like maybe Facebook is right for you. I mean, I've been using I mean, I use Facebook ads consistently and have for like the last decade. So like clearly I'm going to be using Facebook because like that's what I know. But it is nice to hear that like if you're not looking to do big data, Amazon will require you to look at spreadsheets a lot, and my eyes glaze over in that thing. My eyes glaze over in everything that's not like this is the CPC, and anything that's not the Facebook dashboard where it's like this is how much it costs to get a lead. My eyes just go cross. Like also, what's interesting when we talk about Facebook BookBub is the methodology is very different, right? Because Facebook's idea is like make big audiences, make big more like broad audiences. That's how you succeed. And like on BookBub, it's like the opposite. Like I never would have thought like go for people that only have like 3 to 10,000 followers on their page. So like that's also very interesting to hear. So let's say you just pick Facebook now. We didn't pick Facebook, right? Like we're a wide direct. Probably everyone who's listening to this page is at least going to be direct if they're not like wide generally. Would you say that's an accurate assessment of like Amazon versus Facebook though? Like if you like looking at, you said if you like looking at spreadsheets, if you're big on data optimizations, Amazon. If you're not, maybe like more creative stuff or like more that kind of testing, Facebook.
I think the truth probably is that you're going to have to look at a fair amount of data either way if you want to be good. I don't think that there's any way to be good without looking at the data. And I know that some people listening to this will probably say, I've gotten great results not going that deep into the data. But what I hear from those people inevitably, whether it's 6 months down the line or a year down the line or 2 years down the line, then they say, oh, the ad platform has changed. And yes, the ad platforms have changed and gotten more competitive, but the truth is that people haven't honed their skills over that time and they've stayed the same. Whereas other people have taken the game further and not only kept up with the changes, but also gone further into the data and gotten better at running the ads. So I think that it's just a prerequisite with the ads to go into the data. And with the Facebook Dash, if you're direct, then you just get a lot more of that, I would say, right there, because it's tracking things like return on ad spend, the purchases. And so it can be a bit more manageable from that perspective without having to spit out a bunch of spreadsheets. But either way, I'd say you're going to be pretty deep into the data if you're taking this to mid 6 figures, 7 figures, and beyond.
Sure. Thank you for clarifying that. Now, I'm gonna pick Facebook. Like, I don't think. Do you want to talk about
Yeah.
Amazon, Lee? Like, we can talk because I'm this strategy of what we're talking about is like going direct, sending ads to direct sales
Hmm.
store, and then getting spillover on retailers.
Yeah.
Right.
So for the listeners who are catching up, and Nick, just to explain, I don't recommend someone go out and build a direct store for their first launch. I don't recommend anyone have a direct store at all, really. There's a narrow set of qualifications, and it comes down to, do you want to mess around with direct and all the work and all the customer service? And if it's no, even to any of that, then don't do it. But Russell already had a direct store and he had the bundle up. So I was like, well, great. You already have it. You already did all this work. Now you're going to do some more work, but you would do that work anyway, because you're going to set up ads to run to your launch. But instead of running them to Amazon link, just run it to this direct store bundle. And let's see if you can spend $10 and make 11. And then just keep rolling that back into the self-liquidating offer, which we've explained before. Basically, whatever you're spending on marketing, you're making back pretty much as quickly as possible. And then you're reinvesting it. And I was excited because that's really working well for me in my books that are on my direct store. I don't spend ads right now to Amazon. I spend them on the direct store. And I think the Pixel is capturing more data. So more data is good. Not that I really look at it all. And now I've hired Nick's friend, Ben, to run this whole kit and caboodle. And again, this is a very simple proposition. There's a lot you can do with a direct store, a lot of bundling and blah, 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 and merch. But we're keeping it simple and saying Russell has a sales page, and I will put it in the show notes. You've seen it before if you were on a couple episodes ago. And Nick, we're just going to run Facebook ads to that direct offer and keep optimizing that page. And that's going to be the main focus of his marketing. So do you have any opinions on this? Do you want to look at the page or anything?
I just got an email today also that was like, why don't you use Shopify? Why do you use PayHip? And my answer is the same as like, I think most people that are authors, unless you're running like ad traffic, like probably don't need to pay for Shopify. You can do the same work with like an Elementor page, which is what I'm showing in the like one page on your website that has a direct sales offer. If that's what you're running to until you have a bunch of books, is probably going to do as well as like a Shopify store or better than a Shopify store, especially if you're not running ad traffic. Once you start running ad traffic and you're doing a lot of your page and you're doing a lot of sales, this changes. But my experience has been not running ads. So like I'm not getting 1,000 people coming to my page that need to be optimized a day. And then so they come into a sales funnel, usually through a freebie, and then they get fed this offer. And like they don't like there's not really it's not more complicated than that. There's not a lot of cross-selling or upselling or downselling or anything. Like they can either buy this or they can buy like this plus all the rest of my books.
If you're using Facebook ads, it's probably worth going to Shopify just because it's very easy to integrate the conversions API connection. And that's basically a one-click install. And the conversions API, it'll also be referred to as CAPI in some resources. So you may hear it called that. That allows Facebook to track much better after the iOS updates that happened a few years back. So if you are running paid traffic via Facebook to the store, then that's going to probably pay for itself within half a day or soon, depending on how much traffic you're running to the store. And it makes that integration much easier. In terms of the sales page here, so this brings up an important point with selling direct, is that you can optimize so many things when it comes to selling direct. And getting back to our data conversation, tracking all that and testing all that is probably something that most authors don't want to do. But certainly, if you do want to run Facebook ads at scale or another ad platform that uses the pixel at scale, then you do have to split test over time, because you can start with a page that looks good and maybe it converts well, maybe it doesn't. You don't know until you do test it. If you're not willing to do that with the direct sales stuff, then I think that that is a major consideration for whether people go direct at all, whether that's of any interest to them. The other is the customer service aspect, which you can outsource. With the ads, people try to outsource this all the time and they want to. And there are people who can do it out there and do it well, but they're rare. And so when you have a direct sales page like this, not only do you have the ads component that you can test, where you can test different headlines, you can test different creatives, etc., creative elements, meaning headlines, ad images, all that, features on Facebook, but you can also now have data on the landing page, which is incredibly useful if you want to optimize it. But it's another thing on the list now to do. So with the tracking, also, you need to make sure that that's set up correctly with the pixel. This is a common problem with selling any e-commerce product or anything else via Facebook direct, where the pixel is incredibly powerful, but people may have it double firing or otherwise not tracking correctly because they didn't install it properly. And I believe there was some issue with Lee's site where it was over-reporting the sales on Facebook. And then that made all those stats very unreliable because they were inaccurate. So the ROAS looked much better, I believe, than it actually was, because it was double counting some sales.
Yeah, it 2x some of my sales. So the return on ad spend looked way better because it was like, oh, instead of one sale, you got 2 sales, and I only had 1 sale.
How long was it tracking that way, where it was like counting double?
Oh, until I hired Ben, and he said, let's install Wicked Reports, which is an expensive plugin. But he's like, I don't want to waste your money on ads that actually aren't converting, which I appreciated. And, he's another set of eyeballs who's actually going to look and watch all this data. So I'm like, let's do it. And that's when we found out. So yeah, we've had the store coming on 2 years. And so 2 months ago, we decided to actually figure out what's going on.
And just for
Awesome.
context, I was working on Ben with that, like looking through the data because it didn't look right. And it took us about 4 hours to figure out how long that was going. So, and Ben has run ads for a while now. Like he runs ads for a lot of people. I've run ads for years. That's just giving you some context on what your expectations should be. And I think that this isn't mentioned in any direct sales course materials with the sales pages and all that. It's billed as this magic bullet, as is anything pretty much, whether it's just the ads running to Facebook, running to Amazon. You know, if you're running Facebook ads to Amazon, everybody says this is the secret of running Amazon ads or anything like that. And it's just a lot more work. So if someone out there has to troubleshoot that, one, hire an expert because that's going to solve that problem much faster. If you're trying to solve that on your own, you may not even be able to identify that it's a problem. And then two, it might take you 40 hours instead of 4 because you're not sure what you're looking for and you haven't gone through a bunch of reports before. But those things often aren't mentioned either with the ads or some sort of hot, trendy new thing that everybody is saying is going to make you $1 million. And then you get to the other side of the fence and it's the same as your side of the fence. It has holes in it and these sorts of things. But since you can only see your grass, everything looks greener by virtue of just not having that full picture.
Yeah, I,
And
I will give you one that happened to me, which is a different one. It's even simpler than that. So I had an ads team for a while, and we duplicated one of my sales pages in Thrivecart. So it had a landing page that was specifically for meta tracking. It was like you only could get to this page if you like went through meta ads. Like just the only way. Well, I guess it's not the only way. You could have known what the thing is, but and I was like, oh, look at all of these things coming from meta ads. I realized after I fired that team that all of my like they had put that tracker into all of my sales funnels so that it looked like all of their leads, all of my leads that I was getting like organically that were converting into this offer looked like they were coming from Meta because like of how they set it up on my so it could be as simple as like also just making sure your link goes to the right thing and not just trusting like that you did it right or that someone else did it right. I'm gonna think of the best of them that they made a mistake and not that they just like were trying to make their sales look better. But yeah, I after firing them and turning off the ads, for like 2 weeks later, I was still getting reports of like meta tracking. I was like, how can the ads are off? Like, what is going on here? Like, there's no way that these came that way. And so yeah, like it could be a really complicated problem like Nick was saying, or it could be a simple problem, but like there's all sorts of ways to set this up wrong and really only one to set it up right. So we've now set our ad up right. We're now using Facebook. We've set all of the things up right. Like we're now ready to send traffic to the site. I guess like we should probably talk about like they used to call it the triple snap, which is like the image to stop you, the text to make you click, and then the site to like make you buy. I don't know if that's still what they call it, or like I've been doing this for a very long time, or like what the best methodology is, but like how am I actually running these ads like to test converting and to like make sure that they are as good as humanly possible both before I hit go and then like after I hit go.
before you hit go, I think that the main thing is try to confirm that the tracking is correct and that the pixel's set up properly. And then you're going to know whether that's the case once you start running ads, but there's no real way to test either that or the ad creatives, the sales pages, without actually running traffic to them. So you have to start from somewhere and you can spend every single minute of the day writing what you think is the best sales page or choosing the best ad image. And to be clear, there are qualitative ways, meaning people's opinions about things. to determine, okay, this looks a bit better, especially with experience. But I'd say that most of that qualitative feedback, the best qualitative feedback is built upon experience, and you can only build that intuition through running the ads. People say trust your gut, but unless you actually have experience and skill, then that unconscious competence doesn't manifest because there is no competence to come
Right.
out and assess things with.
All right, let me
But
ask this another way.
Mhm.
You're launching ads for this series that I just showed you. What is the first group of things that you're testing? Like, what are the first sets of ads? Like, what is happening in your mind when you're thinking about running ads to the exact page and series that I just showed you?
I'm trying to cut down on variables. So if I don't know if a certain thing works or not, then I am going to try to use what are established best practices. And sometimes those best practices are wrong. Oftentimes, I'd say those best practices are wrong, is what you find with either the ads or the landing pages or anything like that. But that's where I would start with some sort of trusted resource. And for example, with the landing page, one way I can cut that out of the equation and I don't need to test it at the start is by using a Shopify site because their themes are already somewhat conversion optimized. And that's a situation where I'd be fairly confident that they would convert at least on some level because Shopify is not going to ship a product that has a bunch of things that are terrible at selling e-commerce products because then people will not continue with their subscriptions. So I can cut that out of the equation by just using Shopify and one of the pre-built themes. Then on the Facebook side, with the sales ads, you can rely pretty heavily on the AI element from what I've seen with the data. Now, full disclosure, the sales ads expertise and I don't run the sales ads and haven't run sales ads. So this is just coming from working with Ben and looking at some of the data for Lee's account and talking with some authors. But the AI, you want to generally turn those features off. And the AI features are mostly labeled as Advantage Plus. That's what Facebook brands their AI as. With the traffic ads, those generally are going to hurt the performance. But with the sales ads, because Facebook is getting that feedback from the sales pixel and they can close that feedback loop where they see who actually made a purchase and who didn't, they can go find more people who fit the purchasing profile as they get more and more of that data. So the AI features, generally, you can leave those on at the start. If you want to split test them later, then you can do that. With the ad images, headlines, etc., it's really key to make sure that people know you're selling a book when you're selling on Amazon, because with the traffic ads, they can go get a bunch of clicks from non-book buyers. With the sales ads, they can optimize pretty quickly, even if the creative is unclear about whether it's a book. It's probably a good idea to do that, but you can test things that are less clear there if you want, and that can help you branch out into different creatives because also Facebook is building up a data profile with your pixel over time. And what happens on an account basis is that they know eventually that you sell books and they're going to start their efforts there with the audiences. And they know that your audience buys a certain type of book bundle or something like that. So then they start generally there. So you want to be careful with how you train your pixel on your site. For example, if you start with just getting a bunch of people who are downloading a book for free, for example, then if you get a ton of data and feed the pixel a ton of data on that, then Facebook's going to think that that's your ideal buyer profile. And it's not that you can't run ads now to a paid book or anything like that. It's just that you've built up a significant amount of data telling Facebook, hey, this is who I'm looking for. So
So if you run multiple, this is one of the issues that I have is I have nonfiction and fiction across
mhm,
multiple genres. Like, should I be
have separate
opening ad
pixels.
accounts across or just different pixels?
Have separate pixels. It's easier too for organization to just have a separate ad account as well. That's what I would do. I'd have separate ad accounts and separate pixels. Definitely separate pixels because you don't want to be training the Facebook pixel that, hey, this is my buyer over here for my fantasy stuff and my fiction stuff. And then also saying, well, I have these buyers that are writers and authors who I'm
Right.
trying to
I
sell
definitely
stuff
have
to.
different pixels. I just want to
Mhm.
make sure like whether I should be getting different whole ad accounts or not because like
I
yeah,
would
I've
just
got
from an organizational standpoint, just from an
okay.
organizational standpoint, yeah, it's going to be helpful just to whenever you're exporting data or anything like that, then it's just much easier to keep things organized
But it's
on
not
your
gonna
account.
actually on like an F pixel, it's not gonna affect like ad performance if I don't have it. You're talking about like organizationally, I should have different ad accounts, but not it's not detrimental to the ad itself to have two different pixels on one account.
I couldn't say for sure. I think you should be okay, but it's not something that I've tested personally and seen. Um,
Okay.
so I would separate them out just to be safe from that standpoint.
Okay.
It's also easy
Cool.
to select the wrong pixel if you're in the other account and things like that, and muddy the
Sure.
waters a bit.
Sure. Is it also like if I'm running for a free book and then a paid book, am I doing different pixels for those as well?
I think you could. Again, it's something that I haven't tested, so unfortunately, I don't have the data on that. With the ads, it's also very important to execute on what you're willing to do. So that's something that if I were running the sales ads, I wouldn't have any issue doing that. But someone else, they're saying I have to track all this data in these spreadsheets and I have to install my pixel correctly and all these other things. And as the elements start stacking up, they get to the point where they throw everything out and say, I'm not going to do this. So you have to calibrate it to what you're willing to do. And oftentimes, what people do at that point is that they outsource it to someone else, which can work, but the marketing is the most difficult thing to outsource. It's possible, but you're much better off outsourcing the assistant work or the web design or your covers or pretty much anything else, cooking, cleaning, things like that, well before the marketing. The marketing is probably the last thing that you want to take off your plate when you're at that maybe mid six figure to seven figure level. And before that, it can be really difficult to find someone. If you find the right person, then great. But the stories typically are I hired this person, they didn't work. I hired this person, they didn't work, and so forth.
Right.
You can hire people who get your Amazon account shut down. So you have to be really careful. I have outsourced the creative part, meaning, hey, I have people give me images. If I say, okay, give me a wolf and put this book cover on as an ebook, as a paperback, et cetera, et cetera. And some of the things I do is I'll also batch. So I'll take my book and I'll flip through it, which is a TikTok thing. And then I'll upload that one video and then I'm just putting different text on it in Canva and trying my best to get as many iterations of that as possible. So Nick has a 5x5 method, which is really cool. Can I share that, Nick? I know it's proprietary.
Go for it. And I got it from a marketer named Maxwell Finn, so I adapted it for the book stuff. But go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, let's see if I get it right. So 5 images and 5 pieces of copy, and then you combine them all in all the different ways, and that's 25. And out of 25, you'll find a winner, like really a good one. Probably some will be good, but one will be like, well,
You
sometimes,
hope you find a winner.
yeah, you hope. Well, sometimes one will just steal all your budget, and you're like, oh, okay, you're the winner.
Well, you set a
And
rule to prevent that. So you can set a rule to turn the ad off. If you're running traffic ads and you're running these 25 ads, then you set a rule to turn the ads off after 30 link clicks. If you're running sales ads, then you can do 500 impressions. If your budget's a bit tighter, then you can lower that impression threshold. But 30 link clicks, it's going to cost you somewhere around $7 to $15, I would say. And then the impressions are going to be a bit more expensive. So probably around 20, 30, $40, depending on what Facebook is charging you for the CPM.
Okay, Lee. Are you saying the 5 ad images, are you flip through book with 5 different things, or there are like 5 wholly different setups?
I can answer that how I would do
Yeah.
it with the video, because with the images, if they're just static images, then they're completely different images. You could make minor variants of them, but I would only do that once you have something that wins and you're trying to optimize it. So you can change some of the colors on the ad image or make minor adjustments there. With the video, what I've generally heard the consensus be is that the first 3 seconds are the most important by far. So what you can do is keep the same body in the video or have a couple different versions of that, but then just swap out the first 3 seconds. So your 5 different videos would be potentially the same body and then just 5 different 3 second openers, which dramatically cuts down on the amount of time that you have to invest to actually make the videos, because creating videos is a pain otherwise if you have to come up with all new, minute and a half or 30-second videos for each of those 5.
Go
I was
for
gonna
it.
say the reason I'm doing so many video things is because I also post them to TikTok. So I'm batching my time. I'm like, can I make as many videos as possible in this writing sprint time or work sprint time and use it on TikTok, Reels, and in ads?
Close to final question, because I know we're coming up on the hour, is okay, so you have 5, you said 5 still images, very wildly different. Do you mean like the same book in the front with like a different background? Or are you saying like one is a book and like one is a potato and one is like 2 pieces of corn and one is like 2 people like kissing? Like, are they like what counts as a far enough away variant that it is different?
First, no people kissing, because Facebook will probably reject that, as romance authors know. So if you have a couple in the image, they got to be not touching for the most part, far apart on opposite ends of the image,
Like this.
preferably. Yeah, yeah, like they're social distancing from one another
Yeah.
is what Facebook seems to want there. But yeah, they could be like as wildly different as you said there. I would probably make the images relevant to the book, but you could try pattern interrupts where you have a picture of a piece of corn or whatever, a potato, like, and see if that works. Just make sure that you're tracking it with either the pixel if you're going direct, or attribution links if you're sending people to Amazon. So individual attribution links for each specific ad. But really what I'm saying is probably keeping it more, okay, book cover on a different ad image, or book cover with a different review quote. And what you find through testing also is what the definition of wildly different is. So I have a pretty good idea internally of what that means, but that's through testing things like button colors that had very little impact on the proceedings. So that's the classic split test that you see. I changed this button color on the landing page and conversion went up 32%. Generally speaking, that makes no difference. But there are other small changes that can actually make a big difference. An example is I ran the same, or Ben ran the same image. I made the image of the book cover on the book cover background, which is what I generally start with if you haven't run any ads to the book. But since the box set was 99 cents, on one of the images, I put a 99-cent sticker, which is just a circle with 99 cents on it. That converted at around 18% with the sticker on it versus 6% without the sticker. And that was surprising to me because that is not a big change. That takes 20 seconds in Photoshop, but massive difference in conversion. So the answer ultimately, of course, is you have to test these things, but through testing them, you get a much better intuitive sense of what is likely to move the needle. But you still don't ultimately know for sure, because that happened 7 or 8 months ago. And
Right.
I wasn't thinking that that was going to have anywhere near that impact on the conversion.
And how often are you doing these 5 for 5s? How often are you adding new creatives into your testing method?
If you're running traffic ads to Amazon, I would do it once a week. I would test 25 ads a week, and that sounds like a ton, But with the 5x5 method, you're only creating 5 ad images. You can outsource that if you want, and then you have to create 5 pieces of copy or 5 headlines. And you can do that pretty quickly, either writing them yourself or pulling excerpts from the book, or to really accelerate it, you use Claude or ChatGPT.
And if we're running sales, the same.
Yeah, the sales stuff, since it's more expensive, you may not want to do 25 because it's going to take you longer to get the data on that. And so you might not need to do it once a week. The sales ads also tend to last much longer because Facebook can continually optimize where they're getting feedback from your ad pixel. So what happens with the sales ads is you can actually improve to a certain point where you're scaling them up. And because they're getting more data and more of that feedback, then they actually zero in on the target audience and optimize much better. With the traffic ads, they tend to get worse over time and worse with scale. And of course, with the sales ads, it's not infinite where you go from 100 to 200 and things look better, and then you go from 200 to 2000 and things look even better. That's not what I'm saying. There is a breaking point there, but what's interesting is that there is this part of the scaling up process where, because the ads are getting data and are more stable, then they actually either might maintain their performance or improve a bit because Facebook just has more purchase data to work with.
Facebook had a really I almost had a heart attack about 6 months ago because Facebook changed how they do at the beginning. It used to be that like numbers start low and go up. And like about 6 months ago, numbers went high and then got low and then went back up again, and it became more like a ramp instead of a like straight up ramp. It was like a skating ramp. And for about 2 weeks, for about a week, I was like talking to my client, like freaking. I was like, I don't know what's going on. Like $3 an ad is like we can't be running these things for $3 like a conversion, but that did sort of. So sometimes Facebook will do that too. Okay, I just want to make sure I'm doing a 5x5. I'm doing it somewhere between a week and a month, and I'm creating the different copy and ads. I'm not doing 5 and 5 and then doing like letting Facebook do their like magic creative, dynamic creative thing, right? Like Russell is creating all 25 of these.
You have 25 individual ads, and Facebook is phasing out dynamic creative at this point. I don't know if they'll end up ultimately doing that because sometimes they say, "Hey, we're removing this feature," and then they backtrack on that. TBD. But as of right now, they're planning to replace that with something called flexible ads, and not sure exactly what those will look like. But I would recommend just running them as single regular ads and learning how to do that, because you get much clearer data on what's working. And over time, that data is your competitive advantage with the ads. It's worth noting BookBub, Amazon, Facebook, they're really data companies. And the reason that those companies are so successful in their niches is because they have so much data coming in. BookBub has a tremendous amount of data on who their readers are, what readers like, what covers work, what blurbs work, etc. They have more data than pretty much any company outside of Amazon, I would suspect. And of course, Amazon has even more data, which they in turn use to launch their own imprints. And Facebook has a bunch of data coming in on this person is a purchaser. This person likes to click on ads. This person likes to engage with ads. We can't do that as authors on that scale because we don't have the resources, but it's worth considering how can I capture some of that data that I'm getting and make it accessible to myself. And one of the best ways to do that, if not the best way to do that, is just to take a foundational spreadsheets course. And I know that that's not really very exciting and what people want to do, but it's also a skill that, unlike the ads or AI or anything else that's moving fast, spreadsheets are largely going to be the same in 5, 10, 15 years. If you knew how to use a VLOOKUP in 2000 or a pivot table, then you can still do that in 2024. If you were running Google ads in 2005 and didn't keep up with that, then that ad interface and everything about it is basically different in 2024. So it's an evergreen skill, and it allows you to track the data and keep it organized in a way that not only allows you to make better analysis decisions in the present, but also allows you to reference that in the future. And you can build on that over time. It compounds tremendously. And I would say that the bulk of what I have learned is because I just, through running ads for authors, have gotten so much data and seen so many different patterns and case studies. And you can do that on a smaller scale with your own books, but only if you're tracking and looking at that.
Awesome. I love it. That is a great place to end. Unless, Lee, do you have any more? Anything else?
I have ideas about that 5x5 creative for you, but I can email that over and then we can talk about results on another podcast.
Absolutely. Sounds good. Thank you so much, Nick, for stopping by. It's been great talking with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been good being here.
And y'all, I will have in the show notes some links to Nick's website and courses. We've mentioned a lot of your resources on this podcast before, Nick, and I have linked you in the show notes. So hopefully people are going to hop on over and just absorb some of your wisdom.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Thanks for listening. For more, head on over to sixfigureauthorexperiment.com for archive access, resources, and more. We'll see you next time.